Hello everyone and welcome back to the Scots Scheme with Macalester College head football coach Tony Jennison. The Scots Scheme is a program that provides you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Macalester coach questions about the Fighting Scots, football or sports in general, or just seek the coach's wisdom about life events. In this month's episode, Coach Jennison talks to us about team updates, including recruiting and about spring practice. He shares with us his insights on what makes a good leader, and the coach tells us if he could carry Coach Mullenbach on his back. So let's get right to the Scots Scheme. Well, let's welcome back Coach Jennison for the April edition of the Scots Scheme. Coach, let's first of all begin with team updates you have for us.
I just started spring practice yesterday, so very excited to get back out on the field. It's really interesting and fun to see how the young men have changed in our program because we have an awesome strength and conditioning coordinator, Steve Murray. Steve and I have worked at 3 different schools together. This is our 3rd school together, and hopefully the last. I don't want any more, but Steve does a really good job preparing the young men in our program for the rigors of a football season, and they've been working very hard with him in terms of the weight room and then speed and agility, as well as conditioning. And there were some individuals that looked much more athletic yesterday, so was really excited to see that. So spring practice has just started, and we will continue our spring practices through basically the end of April, and our guys are still working out in the weight room 3 times a week, and the school year's wrapping up as well. So it's pretty busy around here right now, not to mention recruiting's wrapping up, and also we're starting, we've already started. We started months ago with the junior class, but that seems a little busier nowadays. We've got a junior day coming up here at the end of the month. So things are busy in the football world at Macalester.
Could you talk a little bit about where recruiting is at for you and players of
Sure.
interest?
Yeah, about maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, the young men that were regular decision applicants found out that they were admitted to Macalester or denied. Obviously, we're not recruiting those individuals anymore, but the ones that were admitted are now visiting, making final decisions, or calling with questions or whatnot, or communicating about financial aid and really going over all the fine details of everything that's important to them. So we've got 5 young men on campus tomorrow. 2 of them are getting in today. Actually, about any minute here, I might be getting a phone call from a young man that we're very serious about, and we'll see what happens. We've got 19 commitments right now, which is a good start, and we've averaged, ever since I've been here, we've been between 19 and 25, which historically is actually pretty good. I know before our arrival, I don't think they were in the 20s. So we've been pretty good in that regard, and we're hopeful that we'll continue to add a few more to our team.
Before we head into our fan questions this week, I just wanted to ask, you have Christian Adams returning and 3 quarterbacks you recruited. Now Alec Beatty has moved on to wide receiver, but with the quality guys that you have in place, what are you kind of looking for in spring practice in terms of who was going to be the guy for you next season?
Completions. Looking for someone to execute the offense and throw the football down the field and make completions. We don't. It's hard in spring practice. We don't have helmets, so we can't really do everything you'd like to do. So it ends up being a lot of pass skelly, a lot of 7-on-7 drills where you're throwing against the defense, and want to see. And that's a drill that really good quarterbacks should complete the vast majority of their throws in the 7-on-7 period because there's no D line. There's no pass rush. There's no O-line. So it should be, in most cases, a pitch and catch. Now, there's some plays which, if you're chucking up a long one, just trying to hit something, obviously those are going to be lesser percentage throws. But with most of the stuff we're doing at this point in the spring, it should be high percentage throws. So we want someone that's going to execute the offense to move us down the field, move the chains, get those completions at this point, but also leadership skills. You're looking for people to step up and really prove that they have the skills to lead the team and be the leader of our team.
Heading into our fan questions, we start from Gene from St. Paul, who asks, what do you think are some characteristics that make a good leader?
I should have prepared for that one a little bit better. To me, I think someone who's positive, someone who comes to work each day, to practice if you're a football player or whatever, and someone who has an optimistic view of what's going on, because when you're pessimistic, you just drag people down, and certainly if you're dragging others down, you're not going to be getting the best out of them. And I think a leader is someone who picks others up around them. And so I think someone who's positive, who's energetic, who's honest, who can see the value in others, is certainly someone that I'd like to surround myself with. And I tell the young men in our program all the time to surround themselves with people that do that to them, people that lift them up, not people that drag them down, because I've been fortunate in my life to be around some really good people that I think have helped me, and certainly if they were negative people, I wouldn't feel really good about my experience with them. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it.
Our next question comes from Patrick from Minneapolis, who'd like to know, do you find that because Macalester is such a high academic school, that things like football are considered to be not that big a deal?
No. I mean, look, we just spent $50 million, in the last 10 years on a new athletic facility. We're putting more money into our locker room this summer to renovate our locker room. We spent millions of dollars on a new turf field, a new video scoreboard. So I don't think you can say that football is not important at Macalester. Now, certainly football is important, but so are academics, so is music, so is chemistry, so is the cafeteria that the students eat in. And I think that's what has really taken Macalester to new heights since President Rosenberg arrived here. He's invested in a lot of different areas. He hasn't just focused on academics, or he hasn't just focused on athletics. He's focused on making this a very strong community, around really great people. And he's an outstanding leader. And every year it seems as though our admissions office is breaking records for a number of applications. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, Newsweek had us in there as the hottest liberal arts college in America. So I really credit President Rosenberg to that. So I don't think you can say that academics are not a big deal here. Now, at the same time, they're not the number one thing here. Or did I say academics? I mean football. You can't say football is the most important thing here, which is fine. It shouldn't be the most important thing. But it is important, and I think the investments the administration have made prove that, show that.
Josh has our next question for us, and he asks, as your seniors are heading off into their future, what are some things that you will remember about this group, and what are some words of wisdom you want to leave with them?
Words of wisdom and Coach Jennison don't really go together. They're not synonymous. So
we know better than that.
Yeah, that might be a tough one, but I always think of them as individuals. I don't think of them as a class, and to me, it's the relationships with them. I think about how we recruited each young man and how they've all got a different story in terms of how they ended up at Macalester. And I think back to Benny Goldman's father. When Benny wasn't in the visit, Benny was gone at class or something. He came into my office, shut my door, and basically said, "Now tell me the truth. Do you really want my son in your team?" He's only 5'8", 5'9", whatever, and he's not the most athletic guy, and he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. I remember his dad just saying, "I'm like, yeah, we do want your son." So I was a little taken aback, but I'll never forget that as long as I live. So you remember those stories about how everyone came here, and you remember the contributions they made to your program and the leadership they provided, and you hope that those relationships continue. And I guess that's if I leave them with anything, it would be to come back to Macalester, see the people that impacted you, stop by hopefully the football office to say hello, go see your professors, because in the business that we're in, that means more than anything else. That people coming back and basically saying, you know what, I appreciate the time you spent with me. I appreciate what you meant. That's the reason I do what I do. So I'm hopeful that that will happen. I guess time will tell.
Next up, we have Judy from Minneapolis, who asks, Coach, with Carroll out of the Midwest Conference this season, what do you think the conference will be like, and are you happy that you will be playing teams that your team has not faced before?
I am interested in playing a few teams that we haven't played, so that'll be a new challenge, and new schemes to prepare for and whatnot. So I am interested in that. I really do like the divisional play, and I'm sorry to see that go for this year. We're hopeful that will come back. There are some rumors that there might be an addition to our conference for 2017, so we'll see what happens there. But in terms of the conference, I think it's going to be the same as it always is. It's going to be tough. it'll be good football. It'll be challenging. I mean, I think we've proven, 2 years ago when we won the conference, every single game on our schedule was contested. It wasn't there weren't any easy games, even though we were conference champion. We really had to prove it. And I remember, Grinnell, who I think a couple years ago they finished in the lower half of the league, but we had to come from behind to beat them in the last quarter of the game in order to secure that victory. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough, as it always is, and I think it's going to be a good brand of football like we've seen over the last 2 years.
Victor from Farmington would like to know why you prefer a 3-4 defense over something like a 4-3.
Well, I prefer it now because it's what I know, and I certainly don't want to change because that's what I'm comfortable with, and for me it's really easy to go to our defensive staff during a game, and if I see something that didn't quite look right, I can very easily say to Marshall, our defensive coordinator, Marshall Mullenbach, or one of the other coaches, hey, have we thought about doing this or that? And so then at least that's all I need to tell them, and I know that they can have a conversation about it and then come back to me and say, you know what, we might make that adjustment, or I don't think we need to because of these reasons or whatnot. So it's really easy for me to communicate, and that's why I preferred a 3-4 defense now. I know why we originally moved to a 3-4 defense was actually when I was coaching back at Wisconsin Eau Claire, we had a hard time recruiting for really good defensive linemen. And in the WIAC, basically you needed those dudes to be about 6'3", 6'4", and on the high side of 250 pounds, and you needed them to move well. And we had a few guys like that, but we had a hard time getting 4 of them. And so we talked to some people, and we actually went up to the University of North Dakota and met with Bubba Schweigert, who was up there as the defensive coordinator at the time, and I think now he's the head coach up there now, and he's been at a couple different places since then. But he's a great football coach. Dale Lennon was the head coach at that time, both outstanding football coaches. And we learned the North Dakota 3-4 defense really from them, and it's something that we started using at Eau Claire, and it went very well for us. We started having some success in terms of the football program there. And then basically the defensive coordinator at Eau Claire, who I was working with, became the Todd Glazier, great man, great coach. He got the head coaching job at Macalester College in Ohio and asked me to come out and be his defensive coordinator. And we weren't going to change defenses. It was the defense that he knew, and now I was going to run basically his defense that he had created. And I think we made some tweaks to it with his approval to expand it a little bit. And then basically when I was looking into the Macalester job, Glenn Caruso, the head coach at St. Thomas, who's doing really great things over there, had an outstanding season. Glenn was looking for someone who had a background with a 3-4 defense, and that's exactly what I had. And I've been a coordinator and whatnot, wanted to move back to this area. So, and the cool part about the 3-4 defense, it's got a lot of roots here in the Upper Midwest, and even one of my mentors, John Steger, who's the defensive coordinator up at Minnesota Duluth. I think he's the most brilliant defensive mind I've ever been around. But Coach Steger, after he worked with Coach Schweigert up at Duluth, then he converted to a 3-4 guy. And so he was, when I worked with Coach Steger before my first year of coaching at Wisconsin Eau Claire, we weren't running a 3-4 defense. But since that time, we both changed at different schools and now are running 3-4. So now I go to him with a lot of 3-4 questions, and he's been great answering questions and showing us some of the things that they do. And UMD, they're a class act up there. They've really helped us out in terms of our schemes and how we want to adjust them and how we want to add to them. So, and really, Marshall Mullenbach has taken our defense to a new level. I mean, they've added things to our defense that I wasn't doing when I first started here. And I really love what we do defensively, and really it's Marshall, and he's got a great crew of assistant coaches with him that are knowledgeable, that are really good football minds, and together, certainly with Marshall's leadership, but they do a really good job of leading our defense, and I really like where our defense is at right now. And we're making some tweaks this year too, and I don't know if you'll really notice it when you look at us next year, but I think it's going to make us a better defense and much more efficient. So we're really excited about the spring and implementing some of these changes. And again, Marshall's done a really good job with our defense, and I think we're in a really good place.
That's awesome. Next comes Thomas from New York, who asks, Coach, are there other sports that you recommend that kids play that will also help them with their football skills?
Yes, all of them. Play every sport. Get out of the house. Get off video games. Get involved. I don't like, we recruit young men all the time, and some of them say, oh, I'm going to give up track in the spring, or I'm going to stop playing baseball, or I'm going to not play basketball this year so I can focus on football. And I still don't even know what that means. So you're just going to go home and, sit in your house and think about football. I don't see how that's going to make you a better athlete or a better football player. I want young men that play multiple sports, that are continuing to challenge themselves. On the field or on the court or whatever it might be. So I don't think it matters what you play. Get out and play sports and get involved in basketball, play hockey, wrestle, play baseball, run track. I think anything is going to help you be a better football player as long as you're competing, you're challenging your body in new ways. I think the cross training is really good. I think it's great for injury prevention as well. So I don't think it matters what sport. I think the important thing is that you're getting involved in others in other athletic activities.
Next comes up Al, who asks, he sees on SportsCenter sometimes that parents of players at colleges and universities will confront coaches about playing time and other issues with their sons. Is there something like that has ever happened that you had to face?
No, not really. I remember one conversation when I was a young head coach with a father about playing time, and it didn't go well. And so I tell our parents, the first meeting I have with them, that I'm not going to talk to you about your son's playing time, that, he's a man now, and if he's got an issue with his playing time, he needs to come in here and talk to us about it. So we really haven't had any problems like that. I do think that I've got a pretty good rapport with the parents on our team, so hopefully that's part of the reason too. Hopefully they trust me and know that I want their son to be well. I want him to have a great experience, and we only can play 11 people at a time, so not everybody's going to be on the field at the same time, but we're going to certainly work hard to make sure that he is having a great experience, regardless of that playing time. So no, it's not really something that we confront here, thankfully. But again, it's something that I think I'm very clear with our parents from the get-go, that it's not something that we're going to talk about. Now, our parents are free to call me at any time if they have concerns about how their son is doing, overall, academically, or, emotionally or whatnot. I'd be more than happy to discuss that, but we don't discuss playing time.
I like when you were a young head coach, like you're somehow like 40 or something right now.
Yeah, well, in my early years as a head coach, I should say.
Next up is Tina from Champlain, who wants to know what you think makes football so great.
To me, it's the camaraderie that goes along with football, the emotion of the game too. Football's a game where when you lose, you're getting your head driven into the dirt. It's not fun. It hurts physically. It hurts emotionally. In other sports, and not to demean other sports, because they're, I love all sports. And again, I just had mentioned how I think people should play other sports. But in other sports, in track, you finish a few steps behind somebody in a race, or in tennis, you're hitting a ball into a net, or, out of bounds. It doesn't hurt as bad when when that's happening, as opposed to someone taking you, driving you into the ground, and then kind of giving you an extra shove when you're down. So I think that emotion, the physical nature of it, builds a special camaraderie in football that I didn't see in other sports, and that's why I chose to play football in college, because of that camaraderie. It's just special in football, and to me, that's why I love it so much.
Next, we have Carl from St. Louis Park, who asks, I hear a lot of people complain about how defenses are punished so much in the NFL, so that offense has basically taken over. Do you find that is true in college football as well?
No, not really. I think it's still football. I just get worried. I see on TV when a defensive back, happens to have a helmet-to-helmet collision with a receiver, and announcers are, all up in arms about how could he do that, and I just feel like sometimes that that people don't always understand, because it's really hard. I've been back in that position, and when things are moving so fast, and you have to see both the ball and the receiver. Maybe some people are better at looking at two things at once, but I wasn't real good at it. It's hard to time things up, and it's hard to see where people are at. And when things move so quickly, you're going to have some of those types of collisions where it just can't be avoided. And the worst ones to me are when the receiver's really low, because he's bent over or something like that, and a defensive back comes in and they end up hitting helmet to helmet. And really, the defensive back there was no chance for something else, because the receiver's already so low that he didn't have time to react and get lower, or you can't jump on somebody's back and try to corral him like that. It's really hard. So I just think that sometimes people are very quick to I guess criticize defenders when things are happening so fast, and it's really hard to make a perfect clean tackle around someone's waist, again, when they're happening fast. Now, that's not to say that every defensive back or defensive player is not at fault at times, because you do see some individuals who are clearly targeting some people, trying to hurt them, and certainly that's not within what I would expect from our players. But I think the rules committee, both in college and the NFL, have done a pretty good job of addressing that issue. There's now targeting fouls, and people will be ejected from the game and stuff like that. So I think they're on top of it. I would just, again, caution people that you understand that it's a physical game, and that's one of the things that makes it so great, and I think it's why it's the most popular sport in our country today. But at the same time, there's going to be collisions that you're going to cringe at, especially in the NFL, when those players are so talented and they're so fast, they're moving at such high speeds. And there's going to be helmet-to-helmet collisions, because you just can't avoid it. It happens so quickly. I know it's happened to me before, where you didn't intend to hit someone in the helmet, but it happened because you just reacted, and you're going. You don't have time to think about what you're going to do, typically. At least I didn't. Maybe I wasn't, I know I wasn't a very good football player, but even at those high levels, I don't think they have time to think a whole lot. They're just reacting. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Excellent. Ken from Winona asked, how beneficial do you think it is to have your team so that you have former NFL players on your coaching staff, and one who has even played at Macalester?
It's awesome. And I think it brings real credibility to what we're doing, especially when, if a player is concerned about this scheme or whatnot. Basically, Coach Archer's always got to say is, hey, we did this with the Chargers or whatnot. And that's never even happened. But I think that those guys bring instant credibility because of the level that they played at. So, a guy like Coach Archer, he's an awesome football coach, a great football coach. And I know that his players work really hard in his position group. They probably are the hardest working position group. I'll say that they're the hardest working position group on our team right now. And because he really challenges them every single day, and because he wants the game to be easy for him. He wants it to be kind of a break when they've been working so hard throughout the week. And those guys don't complain, because they know that he knows what he's talking about, and because it's what he did at really high levels of football. So he's a great coach, and I think he's just one example of the other coaches we have on our roster that, again, because they played at such a high level, they bring instant credibility to what we're doing.
Next up comes an interesting question from Todd from Plymouth. He asked, Coach, we know you're a big baseball fan as well, so what is more exciting to you, the start of the Major League Baseball season or the start of football games?
Well, baseball season, easily, and here's why. I am nervous for the start of football games. There's nothing fun about that at all, or nothing exciting about it. I don't know, that's just the way I'm wired, that I've got butterflies in my stomach and stuff like that, where with the start of a baseball game, I'm excited because I don't have any responsibilities. I can just enjoy it. So the two are completely different for me. And I have found that in the last few years that I'm enjoying our games a little bit more, and I don't know if that's something that comes with experience or with age. But I know, and maybe it's because we're a better football team too now. That could be part of it. But I generally I'm generally pretty ornery on Saturdays, and our coaches. I yell at our coaches more on Saturdays than I do probably the whole rest of the year, and it's kind of how I am wired, and so I wouldn't say that I'm excited at the start of games. I would say I'm more nervous and anxious and that type of thing. And I'm more focused on the task at hand as opposed to being excited, where, again, I just want to watch a baseball game. I've got no responsibility. So the two are very different for me.
Our last question comes from Bill from St. Paul. It says, Coach, have you seen Facing the Giants? And if so, do you remember the scene where the player has to carry the other player on his back and he is blindfolded so he cannot see how far he has gone?
Yes.
How far could you carry Coach Mullenbach like that?
Well, I have seen Facing the Giants, and I do remember that scene. Now, my question for Bill is, have you seen Coach Mullenbach lately? He's been working out really hard, and he is trimmed down. So my guess is I could probably carry him, being honest, on my hands and knees, probably 3 or 4 miles. That'd be my guess right now. If we want to test it out, we can do that maybe later when the weather's nicer. But anyhow, I appreciate the question, Bill. That's pretty humorous.
Well, thanks for joining us, Coach.
Thanks, Rob.
We want to thank Coach Jennison for joining us on the Scots Game this month. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Macalester coach, please send them to us at TonyJennison@minorleaguesportsupport.com. That's TonyJennison@minorleaguesportsupport.com. Just as a reminder, during the off-season, we'll be recording this show on the first Thursday of every month, so we ask you to have the questions to us by the Wednesday prior to that. I want to thank you for joining us again. I'm Rob Paneer, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll look for you next month on the Scots Game.